Well, welcome to Danbury Ridge. We're here in the Octagon Block, and I've got two fabulous guests to join us today, Richard Bampfield and Liam, the winemaker. We're in the Octagon Block, which was planted, the first vineyard to be planted, back in 2014. We've got a fascinating comparison here. 2018, 2022. So there's 4 years bottle age difference?
4 years bottle age.
Now, what about the vintages, Liam? How different were they climatically?
Climatically, actually very similar. Both with warm summers, dry autumns. The rainfall was minimal. I think long periods of time where we didn't get any rainfall in 2018 and in 2022. So quite interesting seeing how close they were to each other. I think whenever 2018 came along, everyone was like, "Oh, you won't see another one of these in your lifetime." And
right.
And 4 years later, we get 2022. But actually, 2020 that was in between was a very similar warm year, but with a wetter autumn at the end. But yeah, both made very similar. The grapes are picked, whole cluster pressed, straight into barrel, 18 months in barrel, and then 6 months stainless steel aging on gross lees before bottling. So these are always bottled just before harvest. So we bottled the Octagon blocks essentially 2 years post picking.
Well, so interesting. So I couldn't resist.
You've gone in.
I've gone straight into the 22.
Okay.
And just now we tried the non-Octagon block.
Right.
22. It's fabulous tasting this just afterwards. This is, we mentioned with the earlier wine, the opulence, the breadth and the palate.
Yeah.
But this has got an opulence at another level. And this has just effortlessly absorbed the oak. Because presumably this had a little more oak than the one we tried earlier.
Yeah.
And yet, to my mind, it's just taking it all in already.
Slightly more new oak, and also the additional time in there as well.
But fabulous aroma, and on the palate, just this amazing
Isn't it?
richness of flavour.
The richness, I think. There's a rather nice bitter, and I don't often talk about bitter, but there's a rather lovely bitter on the end of this, and I quite like that little twist of the oak, I guess.
I think this bitterness, I think it's really important in Chardonnays as well. Quite often in Burgundy, they're now crushing, going in to press the whole cluster in it, and that's to try and get that phenolic edge and some of that bitterness that is very, it takes the wine, I think, to a different level.
Does a winemaker hate it if I mention the word tannin in relation to a white wine?
Right. No, I think it's this. If you don't have tannin, I think for aging it's vital. Yeah. I think it adds layers of complexity and mouthfeel. So important.
It really does.
I think
and it assists the finish. I do think tannins, we talk about them always in terms of structure and the sort of preserving element. I think when tannins are good, they genuinely enhance flavour as well.
I think there's I think a Pinot, if the Pinot can taste like a Chardonnay, if that makes sense. On the as far as like the silkiness and some of the tannins are concerned. I think if you're making red wine where you're looking for huge amounts of tannins, that's not what you want to do necessarily with Pinot Noir. And I think with Chardonnay, in the reverse, I think you actually want to have a bit of grip to it, and whether that's through some skin contact, whether it's through that crushing, or whether it's through gross lees and élevage, and obviously from some oak as well.
Because there's a texture in this as well that's rather beautiful. You get the power of the fruit that you mentioned, Richard, and then you get this rather lovely texture on the palate. And I guess that's what, a bit of tannin.
It's sort of just it's a substance to the
right.
wine. There is this takes me more. I hate to draw the comparisons with Burgundy, but
Right.
It's inevitable sometimes, but this is much more taking you towards the Pouligny, Montrachet sort of
Right.
spectrum to my mind because of that richness on the middle part.
Yeah, I agree.
Now, if we look at
I like that. As soon as I mentioned the word Montrachet, the winemaker
Yeah.
agrees.
Yeah.
No surprise there.
Well, certainly, it's not in the Chablis-esque style that you would possibly associate straight away. It's like England,
Absolutely.
cool climate.
And I know how much you prize the precision and the purity of food, the tension.
Yeah.
But yes, this takes in a different direction.
yeah, the richness is amazing. Now, if we go back to 2018, aromatically, we're on a whole nother spectrum of aromatics here. Rather beautiful nose. Now, of course, at this point, the vines were, you planted in 14, the vines were what, on their second?
So they were basically 2017 went
You
to
had a little bit,
sparkling,
yes.
but not for Danbury Ridge. That was sold, and then 2018 was the first
Okay.
wines to go in.
So interesting. So the younger wine
Yeah.
comes across as that slightly precocious
Yeah.
teenager at the moment. A lot of the action at the front and middle of the palate. With the 2018,
Yeah,
it's just matured. It's grown up a little bit.
mellowed.
It's less explosive at the front,
Mm.
and it all comes through at the finish.
Mm.
And there's much more, to my mind, back of palate, action,
Yeah.
length, intensity. Wonderful to see how that's evolved.
But soft and gentle, an almost creamy character
Yeah.
on the palate. That bit's quite, wow. And you kind of feel this is going to open up over the next half an hour or so.
You do. There's still so much to it.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
going to open out, and that again suggests that if it takes time, this has got years ahead of it as well.
Well, thank you. It's a privilege to be able to taste this, especially in the Octagon wine in the Octagon Block.
Yes.
So,
It is.
thank you, Richard. Thank you, Liam.
A pleasure.
you.
Thanks, man. Well done.
Cheers.
And we'll see you for the Pinot Noir in a minute.